Hi everyone, it's Cal. I hope you're doing well. For those of you that don't know me, I talk about the Kundalini and everything that's associated with it. And today I wanted to just quickly talk about the parts of your being. You are not like a single dimensional being. You are made from a variety of parts that acts together in unity as a whole. And that's the whole importance behind this sort of concept of wholeness, right? That your parts are integrated and you're moving as one being. And I mean, just recently I was reading this book. It's called Internal Family Systems Therapy. And it is all about sort of integrating the parts of your being. And the Kundalini is actually, that's what the Kundalini is. It's the integration of all the parts of your being and then the solidifying of it. So, in order to bring all your parts together, um, this is the work, and it's not just in meditation, it's in everyday life. As a matter of fact, each level of the chakras actually is a continuum, sort of a mini brain of parts acting together. And when these parts unite, the sort of feminine and masculine, which is sort of swimming in everything, when they unite at each level, that's when the bond is formed. And that is the alchemical marriage. And the Kundalini is when the chemical marriage happens all at once through every part of your being. And of course, this sounds very elementary to just be saying that, but again, we want to look at everything sort of with a bit of a bird's eye view because it's super simplistic, but it's complex because we've never been taught really in this way of integration, so that we can look at it in layers to really gain sort of a step-by-step a step-by-step view to understand the wholeness that lies within you. So yeah, this Internal Family Systems is just one of many books out there. Well, I shouldn't say that so lightly because it's one of the new movement of books that are coming out. And just remember, if when you're looking at it from a cosmic view, our world and other worlds, but not all worlds, are at a certain gestation point. Now, some are more advanced, some are less advanced. But at this gestation point where we are, the whole concept of wholeness is being reintroduced because it is the harmony between the parts that makes you feel good, that makes you feel whole. And when you have this harmony happening and you're feeling good in this wholeness, you become more and more certain. You become more and more knowing of what is good for you. And that's because all the parts are integrated. And when all the parts are integrated, they're going, hey, you know, I would like this. Yeah, I think that would be good. Yeah, and it goes with this and it goes with that. And I would like this. And all the parts come together at the center point, which is their sort of meeting area, to sort of talk about or make this integration and ultimately the alchemical marriage, which is happening in greater and lesser ways in your entire being and at different levels of resonance within your being. So it is not just doing one thing or getting one thing or having one thing or saying this or doing that that really brings the sort of happiness that we're all seeking, but it is sort of an integration of things. And this is the whole sort of concept behind the circle. And the circle, the cosmology of the circle, the sacred science of the circle is what we're going to be talking about on the webinar. The webinar really takes sort of a bird's eye view, but it really gives you the basic fundamentals before we go deep on webinar number 2. I don't know when that will be ready, but that will be wonderful as well. So again, the whole being in the tunnel of the wave at life doesn't happen by reaching the top of one mountain. It is more about a whole bunch of little hills joined together that create the goodness and the richness in being. And so, yeah, so I just want to talk about the parts. I also wanted to mention, because I find it interesting. I mean, life is interesting. I have been watching and tracking tarot card readers. And I keep this little file of what was supposed to, and, you know, some out and some are in. And now the way the tarot card readers kind of work is when you get a pull towards one, then there's something in there for you, and you just go with it. You take that little morsel and don't doubt it, and just take it in and just move on. Now, I have noticed, because I've been watching a few of them regularly, that I started watching some really good ones who are not necessarily predicting, but what they're doing is talking about your emotions and feelings. And some of them talk about the why. And I've noticed when I really listen to some of these really excellent tarot card readers that they really understand this invisible world of emotion. And I start to feel a little more integrated. I know. Now, before, of course, I was never into tarot until after the Kundalini, or actually just before the Kundalini. Just before I did the Kundalini, I had bought this tarot book. But it was very super in depth. It's like 5 pages of small print for one card. And that is just the basics understanding. But that one was by Pamela Eakins, who I think she's an obstetrician. So she's a doctor that delivers babies. I can't quite remember, but she has a very interesting story too, because when things happen and you think they're bad, sometimes something good comes out. And she was driving from, I think, one hospital to the next. And I can't quite remember the story. So if you buy her book, you feel free to correct me. She was driving from one hospital to the next hospital, and then she got a flat tire out in the middle of nowhere. And she waited on the road for cars to come, and no one came for hours. She was really out in the middle of nowhere. So she thought, what am I going to do? I mean, it's like 8 at night, and, you know, it's getting dark, etc. And she saw this sort of little footpath as she was walking down the street. She saw this little footpath off into the woods. And she said, okay, I guess I'll just go down. Maybe there's a little house down there. I can use the telephone. And I can't remember if she had a cell phone or her cell phone went dead or she was having problems getting signal. I think that's what it was. And so she thought, well, I'll go they'll probably have a landline. This was back in the old days. They'll probably have a landline. And she went down the little path, and it winded and winded, and she kept following the path, and she almost turned back a couple times, but she says, no, I must be getting somewhere. And she arrived at this little trailer out in the middle of this woods. And she went up to knock on the door, and the door opened, and a little old woman looked at her and said, I've been waiting for you. And of course she thought, okay, another crazy lady living out in the wilderness. And she sat down, And the woman didn't have a phone, by the way. And so she was a bit stranded. And the woman said, well, you can spend the night and you can figure out the rest tomorrow. So she sat down and she started talking about the tarot eventually. And Pamela got hooked and she ended up staying there for 3 days. And she understood the cosmology of the tarot. And this woman knew this tarot incredibly deep, and Pamela Eakins recorded it all. So and anyway, somehow she got back to civilization, but she kept returning to the woods to learn more and more about the tarot. And it completely changed her life, etc., and so forth. But yeah, so I just thought that was an interesting story. So it's a little bit of a digression there. But again, the parts of you, all parts of you, act as a team to be united in all your endeavors. And when one part of you is out of whack, sometimes it can get way out of whack and it can cause illness in the body. And sometimes, you know, not just illness, it can go deeper where you have to have serious medical attention. But balance is really about reining all these parts in, bringing these parts back to center all the time so that they're integrated with the whole. And that is ultimately what the Kundalini is about. And force growing the Kundalini like I did in meditation is focusing on love, because love is sort of the glue that permeates your system that can rein it all into the center. So if you start feeding yourself with little bits of love just throughout the day, because remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. If you start feeding yourself with little bits of love, these little bits turn into bigger bits as you go down the path, and these bigger bits can get you through some tough goes in life. But also it can help rein your health in, because it's how you think is what causes illness. How we think causes illness. So when our mind is out of balance, it is out in particular regions in the body, and these particular regions, every region has a story to tell you. And as we get more and more into the Kundalini, we'll start talking about sort of the astrology of being and how all these parts interact, and the archetypes that go with these parts, which is really interesting. But yeah, the emotions in your body are what fuel the Kundalini, and the mind is what needs to be in check, in focus. When the mind is focused, and especially when the mind is focused on love, focused on the heart, the body will naturally pressurize the power that the organs are producing, the emotions, to the center of your body. And when there's pressure to the center of your body, it can only go in two directions, right? Down and up. And that's when you unite to the earth, the goddess, and to the father principle, the sun. So this is a really, really big topic. It's absolutely fascinating because it's all about you. You're heading there, whether you want to know it or not, or if you're into it or not. This is happening to you. So if you haven't joined the webinar, please do. I'll put the link below. But other than that, I just wanted to point out how sometimes, listening to emotional stories, as in the tarot, or maybe you're watching something on TV or Netflix or whatever, but sometimes emotional stories and music it can help you rein it all in. It just depends. You really have to go on how you feel, because I mean, if you're watching a drama where there's terrible things happening in it, sometimes that isn't going to rein it in. Maybe sometimes it does, but sometimes it isn't. But all these things in life are working to bring the mind body into balance in a variety of ways. And it's helping us not just understand. Sometimes when you just listen to music, it'll put you into that right mode. But also understanding what you need when you need it is very valuable. And that's why know thyself is critical. Because when you know thyself, you know what your authentic desires are and your authentic direction is, and you're willing to step in that direction. Even if all the odds are against you, you're willing to step in that direction. And it takes, sometimes it really takes an act of courage to do that. But sometimes also when it's something you really love, or it's really right for you, even if it's against all odds, you're still all in and you want to go in that direction. So all these things are working hand in hand together to not just bring you into utter alignment, but also utter alignment where you're moving in the right direction, always towards you. Because this life is about you. It's not about pleasing anybody outside of you. It is about pleasing you. But first and foremost, you do want to get into balance, because sometimes we can have false desires, especially if we think we can't get our desire. It starts to kind of go rotten and turns us into other sort of directions and gets us moving in some strange ways. So it's really pivotal to kind of be able to rein it all in, to be able to get back to self, which sometimes can be hard, but sometimes it can be easy. Sometimes I'm always kind of getting in some downer mode about, oh, everything's so dramatic. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes life is just really easy to get on that path. But anyhow, I wanted to just talk about all the parts of your being, because all the parts of your being are really are really described by the science, the sacred science of the circle, which is what the webinar is going to be about. And it is the cosmic science that relates to everything that you can see and not see. So it relates to all things. And that's it. I just wanted to pop on and talk about these few things and say hi. And other than that, I hope you got something out of this video. And please be sure to leave a comment or give it, or like it if you do like it. And other than that, I hope to see you next time. Everyone, take care and have a great day. Bye for now.